Kia ora. Nice to see all of you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good afternoon and welcome back to those of you who have visited us previously to Te Whare Waraka o Aoraki. The next event in Lincoln University's State of the Land Bioeconomy series. This is a really exciting series in terms of sharing between Lincoln University and the Bioeconomy Science Institute the lessons of our research and reaching out and making them real to society. As Katie indicated, I'm the provost here at Lincoln University. Very old-fashioned term, basically means I do anything that the vice chancellor tells me to do. Some reality is I have responsibility for the faculties and the research activity of the university. So it gives me real great pleasure for this meaningful partnership that we have with the Bioeconomy Science Institute. As you know, this series is delivered in partnership. Together, we're creating a space for conversations that bring science, industry, policy, and community together to explore the future of Aotearoa New Zealand's land-based systems. The goal of this series is simple but critical: to connect research with real-world challenges and opportunities across the bioeconomy, to highlight the collaborations needed to support sustainable land use, resilient production systems, and informed decision-making. Today's session focuses on the growing momentum behind the Indigenous bioeconomy. As Aotearoa New Zealand responds to climate change, biodiversity loss, and increasing pressure on natural resources, there is a growing recognition that the future economic systems must be sustainable, resilient, and strongly connected to place. An Indigenous bioeconomy offers a powerful perspective on how this can happen. It emphasizes long-term thinking, strong relationships with the natural environment, and the importance of intergenerational well-being alongside economic development. We're very fortunate to be joined today by two speakers with deep expertise in this area. Professor Paura Tapsell from Lincoln University brings extensive experience at the intersection of Māori development, leadership, and innovation. His work focuses on climate resilience and supporting Indigenous communities across Aotearoa and the wider Pacific to strengthen well-being, resource sovereignty, and long-term sustainability. Joining him is Dr. Sue Zuidenbos from the Bioeconomy Science Institute. With background in plant science, animal biochemistry, and pasture systems, Sue now works closely with Māori partners and leads Māori research and partnerships within the Future Farming System research priority. Together, they will explore how Indigenous perspectives can guide bioeconomy initiatives that deliver cultural, environmental, social, and economic outcomes for New Zealand and the world, and how science, policy, and industry can better support Indigenous-led pathways. It promises to be a thoughtful and inspiring session. No pressure, guys. Please join me in welcoming Professor Paura Tapsell and Dr. Sue Zuidenbos to this session. Paura, a little bit of time. I think we give them 15 minutes. Then we give Sue the same. And then I have a suite of curated questions, which we'll just go through, and then open it up for the audience to have a discussion. And obviously, as Katie said, the opportunity to have further discussions out in the foyer. So, Paura.
Mana whenua, te taurutu me ngai tāhu, nā reira, tēnei koutou. I'm the warm-up act for Sue, and my job is to present a couple of our family photos, which is probably the easiest way to open up a discussion around the bioeconomy, given we're all part of our DNA to this planet. In particular, I want to first of all introduce you to an area that I come from. I'm from the Aotearoa region in the North Island, around Lake Rotorua down to the coast. And this picture here is our estuary at Waihi, and that's after a rain event, and it's about 150 years of colonisation and the downstream impact of what that actually means for us as a community that still belong to that wider environment. What I'd like to present here is that if we're going to understand how we're going to shape our future bioeconomy, we need to understand the trajectory from the past to how we got here in the present, and then take account of that in moving forward. One of the issues that I've grown up with, in coming from a rural background, and my grandfather being a farmer, then my dad became a teacher, is the shift from a nation that was built like a single-hulled waka, and it had kind of an outrigger on it called Māori. And that waka was okay when the seas were smooth, and everyone thought that as long as Māori knew their place out on that outside part of the waka, and like my uncle Powerhouse, good with the guitar and great at singing, and we've got Billy T. James and fantastic jokes that had a good laugh at ourselves. But when it came to the real business, in the governance, we only had 4 representatives in Parliament. One of them was my Uncle Peter. And as he said, I represent Labour first, Māori second. And so it was a very difficult period going through the 70s and 80s. And then in the 1980s, mid-1980s, New Zealand sort of had a coming to Jesus moment when they realised the economy wasn't part of Great Britain. We were separated from the EEC, now EU, and we had to find our feet within a Pacific context. And part of that finding our feet was, well, what is our national identity? So we get to a point in the late 80s where the Māori identity starts to become part of New Zealand's identity. The Te Māori exhibition, for you guys remember it, was a time when we were able to reflect on our Indigenous uniqueness, and Māori, mostly now living in the cities, had an opportunity to actually step up and say, hey, this is about us. But Māori had gone their own learning curve in that renaissance. Since then, into the 1990s and 2000s, Māori are very apart, and they've now found their way into the bioeconomy. And notwithstanding that, also the economy proper, from a Māori perspective, is over $100 billion today, and its ability to earn money for New Zealand. So coming back to the past, we talk about the kaika, the kainga, the marae, as being a collective of our people, of our biosphere, whenua, and of our tawa, resources, belongings. And the issue we've had in the past through since the 19th century is that from an Indigenous perspective, our communities, despite not having title over lands, still saw themselves as the kaitiakitanga, the protectors of the lands, of the soils, of the waterways, of the forests, of the estuaries, and the ocean. And they refer to that guardianship as protecting the mauri, the life, energy, the essence of, and the balance of their catchments. There's 780 marae in the country, and each one of them had their own particular area that they protected. And it was based out of waterways. But since the 19th century, our people, the marae communities, the tangata, were excluded, and then they became labour units in the development of the lands, developing farms, the New Zealand economy of the late 19th century through the settlers, and then through to World War II, and the extraction of the benefits of the land has continued until recently without any limits. So the 21st century impact is the inevitable shift in the biosphere's energy equilibrium, or mode, to new extremes, not just environmentally, but economically, socially, and politically. So when we look at the current crisis that we see amongst our Māori people, 95% now live in urban areas, and a great number of those make up all of our net social disease. Politically, we are getting division, we're getting the current well-being of our people is going lower and lower to the socioeconomic stratas, housing issues, health issues, etc., etc. So what we talk about in a Māori Indigenous perspective is that the taniwha is reawakening. And so the 8 climate events we've had, landslides, flooding, those are seen as the whipping of the tail with the taniwha. And the taniwha stirring, the taniwha wing. It's a metaphor for things are out of balance. The mode is shifting to a new space. And if it keeps on shifting that way, equilibrium maintained, but that equilibrium may not include us or in the future, or at least it's going to be a lot more difficult. So these are in train. So we're hitting those tipping points and we are exceeding those tipping points. It's like George Monbiot said in The Guardian in 2023, Earth systems are being rushed towards their tipping points by governments that offer us nothing but chaos. Bit of that happening right now in the Middle East, not to mention internally in the United States. I was only there about 8 weeks ago, and internally America is splitting into two. There are 2 tribes, a red tribe and a blue tribe, and in between is which way are you falling. So it'll be interesting to see how the midterms turn out. But when we talk about the past, we can't forget the past that includes our future. So here we have my nephews holding a flag that represents the British at face value, but is also representing the death of their great-great-grandmother in the Battle of Orako in the Waikato, and remembering her and her sacrifice for a better New Zealand. So these are the prices that had been paid for citizenship. Our people went to war. Monty Wikiriki, who's a former member of this university, he was one of the leaders in the Māori Battalion in World War II. So these are people that have kept on giving, despite at the time no obvious payback. Could not go to the same pubs to have a beer with your Pākehā mates who they fought alongside over in North Africa or in Greece. So that's the past. If we take account of the historical background, then we can start looking at how we can move forward and positively start to develop a bioeconomy that will be a step towards us taking stock and remapping a shared te framed future for our nation. I mean, we're not meant to in the last 2 years use te in most things, but the treaty is a founding document of our constitution, and for Māori that is still absolutely critical, key, and important to who we are today. So taking account of that as a nation level, or in other words, don't just tick the box, let's open it, is a part of that shared responsibility, shared accountability, and the bringing together in terms of whakapapa genealogy from the Māori perspective again, the mātauranga, the knowledge of the Māori world, being joined, married with the knowledge of the Western world, of the bioeconomy, provides new innovation, sharing of resources, sharing responsibilities, sharing of duties, and the sharing of our people and their future, especially our youth. And the outcome of that is what we call intellectually responsible belonging, rather than intellectual property. And that knowledge, patents, the new ways of doing things could not have been possible without both sides participating. It's in the same way that we're all here today, with both our mother and our father. Or as Vim said this morning, if Māori only provide the wheels to the truck still can't go without the wheels. And so we sometimes think, oh, Māori only provide 5% of the overall picture. But that 5% has enabled the critical innovation to occur. And it's also, we need to take stock of the people that provided that side of the innovation, what they have lost in the last 150 years of colonisation. So part of paying it forward is rebalancing the equation so we get back to a more equal footing, a more equal standard. And I've just shown up here, this is one of the models that we're working on up in the Waihi history, the picture I showed you before of all the pollution. And it was about working with the farmers, there are over 200 farmers, and working with the local marae and coming up with a double-hulled waka, a lot more stable, and a platform in the middle where we come together and we share the responsibilities. We are able to share the governance, share the values, and even today we think about, we use the word mana when we talk about the All Blacks, but not necessarily because they're Māori, but it's because they espouse a sense of service on the field for us to maintain and sustain our identity as New Zealanders, unless we follow up with the So, and then through that, you have shared appointments. And I provide this to anyone's here from the Sewer District Council or ECAN. This is the Blue-Green Network white paper that we're developing. And this is a model that I hope we can bring into play and have Ngaitahu see that there's a space being made to actually allow their innovation to come together with the bioeconomy today. Lincoln and bioeconomy and BSI can work together alongside our government representatives. And the treaty isn't just at central government, it's also at local government and at the region. So the microphone soon. I set up with our ANZAC service last week, and we had over 3,000 people at our marae around the graves of our old people that fought in both wars. And we even sang the Australian anthem, Advance Australia Fair, in Māori. And my Australian friends that were with us were just like, what the? They started to sing along, going, hang on, this is showing innovation. So it happened here firstly, up at Whenua and Rotorua. And I know that my Indigenous friends over in Australia, we're getting recorded and send it to them, they just love it. So, lest we forget from where we came, understanding that past, understanding the pain that everyone's gone through, but also the willingness to forgive and forward, but we must not forget the past lessons. And it's not just about improving our bioeconomy, it's also bringing our planet back into a balance for our future well-being, especially our grandchildren. Sue, what's it? John.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Tuatahi aki ka mihi au ki ngā whenua, ki ngā tarua he kaitiaki. Kanui tu mihi ki a koe paura. Nei mihi au kua kōrero i te. Moku aki, hei tau iwi a hau. Kua airangi no ingarangi no kuti rana a hau. I whanu mai au, I pikiki mai au I Waikari ki Hirano. Ko makatiri te manga whakaruru o Waipara te awa whakaora. Kei Helkit, kei te taha o Waimakariri o e no hau ana. Hei Team Leader Māori Research and Partnerships, hei Research Priority Impact Champion ki Maingi Taio I Tuhiraki Lincoln, Mahi, or Suzanne Boss. So just starting off with an acknowledgement of nai te ruahiki, the mana whenua of the local area, and our work with Tamutu Runanga, and particularly I want to note the Tuhirakuri, a beautiful building over here that was designed with the cultural context, the narrative of the people, the history of the mana whenua here is weaved into our building, and it is a fabulous place to work. It's beautiful, and how we connected into them is just amazing. So here I am starting off the journey in the sheep and beef farm in North Canterbury. I grew up there, a couple of stints at Lincoln University, actually Lincoln College, then Lincoln University, plant science honours, and then animal biochemistry PhD, interspersed with a stint down at the Winchmore Research Station, the Ministry of Ag and Fish on the Canterbury Plains, just out of Ashburton, a postdoc in the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, looking at the growth hormone receptor, and then coming back to ag research at the Invermay campus in the south, where I was working with leanness and fatness in sheep, on the growth hormone associated there, and deer velvet antler. From that time, I took people would say a career break. For me, it was a fabulous opportunity to raise our beautiful 2 children, one of whom's down the back there. And then during that time, I was contracting back to our science organisations. And so Lincoln University, I did some work here, crop and food back in the day, Carolina there, and of course ag research. Returning in 2010 to work in pest and weed management, and then moving into plant systems. It's been a long pathway, but actually I'm coming to the point. It is a pathway, it's a journey. And the moving with our farm systems teams, we started to interact with our Māori partners, and that's where I've been on this amazing journey of learning in Te Ao Māori and being able to understand some of the history and take the amazing opportunities I've had to learn. And as I say, now based just over there. So I want to talk a little bit about the whakapapa of the work that I'm going to talk about. So it's not my work, I'm talking on behalf of a whole wide group of people, some of whom are in the audience here, who've been involved in this work from the start. But it's based at the start, and I want to acknowledge key mentors, Tānera Kingi, Chris Korahiki, and Ariana Estoros, who've been responsible for initiating and supporting this work that I'm going to talk about. Our work with Māori partners, we founded our group based on values. Working with Ngā Matatika, we developed these, and that's a foundation for our team and our wider teams to be able to go and work and interact with our partners. Our Māori research plan that we've developed is focused around intergenerational farming landscapes for intergenerational wellbeing. Through that work, identifying some of these distinctive factors of what's important that we have to remember when we're working with Māori landowners and agribusinesses, the diverse and collective land ownership, the fragmentation of the land, and that intergenerational aspect that is deeply woven. Underlying all this, Kia Manawa Nui is our ag research, as a founding member of the Bioeconomy Science Institute, our platform for learning and development, and that's been instrumental in being able to go authentically to our partners, and that learning and development has been available to all staff to understand Te Tiriti and the history of Aotearoa, to be able to learn about tikanga and the importance of ngā tauranga Māori. So just continuing on this journey to impact, I wanted to touch, and I think Paula, you mentioned the importance of the Māori economy. It's really underestimated by most New Zealanders, the impact. And I've pulled a little quote out of a recent report released by Ministry of Primary Industries. In 2023, whenua Māori in primary production, approximately 5.3 billion contribution to GDP. So it's the economy is really significant. Again, I want to go back to this partner aspirations and our Māori partnerships team connecting with our partners to understand their aspirations. So we're working along where they want to go, not necessarily the science that our researchers want to do, it's where they want to go. And our kaituhono, our Māori partnership specialists are critical in that. The kaupapa Māori methods that we use alongside in our projects, and things like whakawhanaungatanga. So starting the project to get to know each other, to understand who we are, what our connections are, and where we want to go. Making sure that the tikanga, the appropriate cultural ways of being are embedded with working with our partner, using te reo Māori when we can, and doing this in the context of wānanga. And this, to me, is really critical. We all can sit together, share the understandings, we listen. We listen to our partners, their aspirations, and then we share how we can go on that journey with them. I'm not going to talk in detail about the research disciplines, but you can see there's many that we've embedded in these research and so many people. I haven't named people because it would be too hard. There's so many people involved here that I would miss people out. So I'm just going to run through about four impact examples that we've worked in. Just before I get into the details, I want to mention this first, the top report produced by Rob Fletcher and Bill K. Blake, which was looking at the impact of our research spending over a number of our case studies. $1 of our research spending had resulted in $1.59 of commercial benefit to our partners. And from $1 of our internal investment in working with Māori partners, we had helped generate another $1 of our external funding. But the dollar value is actually only a small part of the value we've created. The values of working with our partners include those social, the cultural, and the environmental aspects that are built in, that are weaved as part of these projects. Again, recognising the team behind the work, I don't really want to emphasise that I am really speaking on behalf of a really large team. Each partnership that we work in is unique, very unique. So we have to start at that beginning, that cultural context, that complex landscapes and land ownership, and the myriad of opportunities that that our partners are faced with, and how they make their decisions alongside that. So just into the first example that I'm going to talk about, Te Pua Waitanga, our internship program that's been running for 5 years, and this is about bringing rangatahi into science. What's critical about this program is, as opposed to its normal summer studentship where there's a researcher this is the program, come and I'd love a Māori student to work with me and we'll do this. Actually, we take the best, the top 6 or whatever we can find rangatahi Māori in the country who want to work with us. We find the projects that they are interested in and help them along that way. The program is tikanga-led, so we begin with a mihi whakapapa. We finish with a noho marae to share our learnings. We connected into other, not just AgResearch and the Bioeconomy Science Institute, but Dairy NZ, Fonterra, other primary sector organisations. And the mentorship continues beyond the program. And you can see some of the pathways that these students, some of them are obviously students returning to their undergraduates, but some of the other pathways are here. I think we've had 5 Lincoln students in our program, one of whom's sitting here today, so fabulous to be part of here, and I know that there's whānau of another one sitting down there. I think Crystal, you're there. So it's been a fabulous program. Next example is around a farming trust that we worked with up in Tairāwhiti Wikiri Trust. Again, this is much more of our traditional farming systems where farms, wheat science, soil science, pasture agronomy brought into this mix, and really working, the impact of that has been around thistle control, establishment of white clover and grazing strategies to support that, the reduction in nitrogen fertiliser and the herbicide and reduced herbicide costs. Together, this over the time of the research, this pulled together to have an estimated increase in profit by around 20% for the farm. So it was a fabulous partnership. It was done an innovative farming systems approach led by Robin and Mike Dodd, and in combination with Ravensdown agribusiness working with us there. The next example here, completely different. Again, we have one of the founding researchers, Sonia, in the room with us around this. A wide range from water innovation, the Mamaku skincare product, whānau-owned business, skincare, starting right from the start. We have the wide range of research expertise we brought into that program, but what's really critical here is partners expertise that was brought in, their mātauranga. So we worked closely with them to be able to bring their mātauranga through, and as you can see with the impact, create this prototype product, develop and test it. A critical thing of this piece of research is the partner owns the license for that extraction methodology to produce that product. Now, internationally marketed skincare products focused on children. And to the last example, more recently we've been working with Alps to Ocean to produce the Meta Bar, Māori-owned health food company, but that doesn't really say it. The vision for this company is huge, was actually how could we change the system, the dairy systems where there are surplus animals from the young dairy beef. How could we actually create real value out of this, the whole system? So we work together in a couple of aspects. One is to develop with our meat and food scientists, developing this snack food prototype, and then work together to help scale and for production and marketing. The other aspect of it was working with a wide range of industry participants and looking at life cycle analysis by using this young dairy beef in the product, how the greenhouse gas emissions intensity of the system could be reduced. So quickly, just to summarise, I think there's two things I want you to go away from here, thinking about. One of the key attributes, I think, has been the commitment that AgResearch, the predecessor to the Bioeconomy Science Institute, had to resource our research with Māori partners. So our Māori partnership staff have been critical to be focused on those partner aspirations. A really special part of the work we've done is we've been able to provide direct funding for our partners to work in these projects, to develop their own capability and to be fully involved in that research. So that's been really, I think, a game changer for our partners so that they can be deeply involved. They're not receivers of the research, they are working with us in that research. And as I've said before, that emphasis at AgResearch, right from our board down, to develop that cultural capability of our researchers and our staff. And just to touch quickly on the research processes, I've talked a little bit about how we've really focused those research outcomes on the impact on that partners' aspirations, not the science outcomes. The contracting that we used has been designed to protect the mātauranga of the project. We use the kaupapa Māori methods, but where appropriate, sometimes it's not appropriate. And throughout our work, considering Māori data sovereignty, Māori data governance, our principles in the work, it all adds up to co-design, co-development, co-delivery, working together. So, to the future, Bioeconomy Science Institute, Maingi Tāo. We're off to a strong start. We've had the appointment of our Chief Indigenous Innovation and Partnerships Officer, Stacey Whitiora. We had an internal team who worked on to develop our ingoa Māori, Maingi Tāo, the beautiful name, was developed internally from our staff, which was really shows the depth and capability of the people that work in our organisation. We've got board endorsement of our Te Tiriti o Waitangi framework. So those important foundational commitments of partnership, participation, active protection and equity, and guiding principles to support them. They're embedded in all of what we do. And as I said, this ongoing support for that cultural competency development of all our staff. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Thank you, both of you. I think that was a fantastic opening. My suggestion is you pull a couple of chairs up, because we don't want to have you standing here, as I pose a couple of questions to you. If you want, but I think, is everybody able to hear appropriately in the back? So if you wish to answer, I suggest you stand up just so that you can hear it. The first question is looking ahead. What does a successful Indigenous bioeconomy in Aotearoa New Zealand look like in 10 to 20 years' time? And what are the most important steps we need to take now to move toward that future?
I think the question is an opportunity to just emphasise some of the things that I talked about. But I think from my perspective, and I speak as a tangata treaty, so I don't have, as I said, I don't have Māori whakapapa. So what is important is we have that understanding of our history, that we be able to learn who we are as a nation and how we can go ahead. And that needs to be embedded in everything we do. So that's got to be the starting point. What we have to do is take our Māori partners along the journey. And I think part of the challenge for our partners is that, you know, they're starting from a back foot in terms of their ability to access capital, develop some of the great ideas and things we have. So being able to support our partners to get going, and then allow them the freedom to use the information, the IP that we've developed is really instrumental. But it actually comes back to the capability that we develop now.
I'd probably focus on the measure of success would be using as a proxy the social economic position of Māori in the New Zealand economy. And if we start to lower the negative social indices of our prisons, of education attainment, negative education attainments, etc., that will be indicative of a bioeconomy that's now starting to function in partnership with the Māori economy. And the Māori economy at the moment is very divorced from the reality of most Māori living in New Zealand, growing up third, fourth generation, disconnected from their marae communities. And part of that developing the robustness of the bioeconomy, which is in this case mostly surrounding those marae communities, is having the economy back home with the marae communities that creates a pipeline of industry, technology, education, and well-being that is then part of that regional overall regional well-being of that area. So, for example, the Bay of Plenty, the Rere Kahia, part of Kaitiakitanga, part of the wider Bay of Plenty, Western Bay of Plenty District Council, how are they responding to each other's challenges? The marae challenge is a depopulation, and the council challenge is a breakdown in their systems, especially around erosion, flooding, and the pollution from current kiwi fruit and avocado industry. So that'd be my kind of short answer to a long question.
Thanks, Paula. The second question is, what does meaningful partnership between Māori science, industry, and government look like in practice? And where do you see the biggest opportunities to strengthen those relationships?
I guess the strengthening of the relationships begins by using those methodologies. We get to know each other. So we spend the time to know who we are and where we want to go, and what we, rather than setting KPIs that are not connected to the practicality of what our partners and what the industry are. So I think I think that's probably the key thing is working to keep it. It's the same message. I think it'll be the same message sometimes.
That's huge. So these are a theme, and you can expand on these. But what changes are needed in the way we research, innovate, and invest to better support Indigenous-led bioeconomy initiatives?
I think that question is quite challenging in that our bioeconomy is so nationalised in its thinking. It's broad. It's about creating a New Zealand perspective position to go international, its trade, and make a return for our nation. But we need to be able to act locally at a level where the engagement of the local communities with industry, with the local populations, is we find a balance there. And if we're not servicing the local communities first and foremost, then we're going to get this disconnect, and that disconnect will continue. So the rural areas, especially where we're having new bioeconomical innovation, how is that also being accountable back to the land and the resources that originally were extracted or taken from the local populations that, when we signed the treaty, was 99.5% of New Zealand, to today where the economy of most of our marae is barely a couple of hectares, and if we're lucky, some of them have access into trusts that are developing some fantastic innovation. It continues, and so for New Zealand's sake, that if we don't find that accountability connection, that the waka will never be evenly balanced, and that we'll always, as soon as we get storms and then economic, we become tippy, we are in trouble. So the current situation in the Middle East is a great example of us having been so caught up in developing our bioeconomy in a particular direction, and now realising that diesel and fertilizer are a big part of maintaining our current systems. What are we doing to, well, nothing like a big crisis to wake us up, and that's the taniwha. So our taniwhas are scary right across all the different regions. So how can we find new innovation?
And just continuing on that theme, Paula, I think that working locally is so important. And as a government comes in and they've got these big goals and just go and do it. And then you have to go, but you have to then go down to the people. There's a couple of points, and Robin, you always challenge me with this. Why are we working with these people and not these people, these people and not these people? Because there are 1,000, maybe 5,000 trusts, Māori businesses, groups that we could work with. So why are we choosing? Why have I put three up there? There's a few more than that behind the work we do, but why is it a small percentage? And I think the answer is that we would love to work with them all, but we don't have the capacity, of course. But actually, it's the readiness. It's the readiness of the partners to be able to go on that journey. And I know there's partners that we would desperately love to help more, but they're not quite ready because there's other parts of their business, their organisation that are holding them back in some way. So it's working at that level. And I don't want to get too political, but I have to be careful here, because you go to an organisation like Ministry of Industries and their Māori business unit, and they are absolutely fantastic. They really are. And then the government lever comes on, and you must do this and this, and those levers are absolutely contradictory to the way we're able to, or how we want to be able to work with our partners. And so it's, you know, it's really challenging, and that to me is the real challenge of how we can, there is funding there, but how can we access it, because we can't meet the metrics that the government's imposed on us.
And to build off that, one of the critical dilemmas we have is that there's a lack of leadership. When you take away a resource from people for 5, 6 generations, how can they practice leadership and managing those resources if they have no access to it? So our leadership in our marae communities has been whittled down to very specifically to the protection of our people, spiritually, through churches, through religious movements, especially death. That's our life crisis. When someone dies in the community, who's going to take over that position of specialist knowledge? And that specialist knowledge is becoming more and more lost as the generations go down, because there is no resource for that specialist knowledge to be practiced upon. And so then the youth growing up in cities, the grandparents that grew up in the cities, how do they access that knowledge if that knowledge only makes sense back in the communities from which their great-grandparents came? So these are massive challenges. So it's a leadership vacuum. Then we have the Crown, the government, saying, oh, well, we'll just throw a whole lot of money at them. They're Māori, they'll know what to do. So we end up becoming our own worst enemy, where we have Māori that get put into positions, and they might have a degree from Lincoln, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand Mātauranga within the region from which their great-grandparents came. So a big part of the education is bringing our young people back into those spaces to relearn, recapture that those values and that special knowledge associated with that region, and then work with local councils and local societies.
Actually, continue the corridor here, Paul, because when we talked last week, and we talked about the taupo, the website. So the website, we all think it's a beautiful native bird, and it's but it's actually a recent visitor. That's what its name says. It's a recent visitor to New Zealand. We think it's a native bird, but it hasn't been here as long as lots of our other birds have. And we were talking about this in the context of Mātauranga Māori, and I strike this so many times, so much working with our researchers within the Bioeconomy and Science Institute, that we're working on a project, and there's boxes to tick. Does this involve Mātauranga Māori? Oh no, this is an idea that came from technology developed in Germany, so it couldn't possibly belong, because Mātauranga Māori is something that was in the past. And I really want people to understand that Mātauranga Māori is a living body of knowledge, and it keeps evolving. And we need to understand that it's not just something that's there back years ago. It evolves like any other knowledge, and I think we've got to respect that. And I think the other part of Mātauranga, and I was in a meeting recently, and I really cringed at someone. It wasn't actually someone from it was an external person, I'll say, but they made some comment about the relevance of Mātauranga because it wasn't recorded. And I think this is one of the things. This is one of my, I mentioned Chris Kurapiki as one of my big mentors, and Chris really explained to me about what Mātauranga and the transmission of Mātauranga between generations. And because we're trained in Western science, we want to go to the library and read everything and download, and that we don't put the weight on that oral tradition, that passage of knowledge. And that's not just oral, it's built in the buildings, everything, the treasures, the taonga that people have. And so what we have to understand is that it's a very valid system of knowledge. And if we want to respect it, we can't go and pick up a book. We have to develop a relationship. And when we have a strong relationship with those partners, then they'll be prepared to share it. That's right, Sonia, isn't it? In terms of the Mātauranga around the development of the mamaku product. It's theirs, and they will only share it with us when they know that we're responsible to be shared.
Well, thank you. You've actually checked off the next question. What are the key challenges or risks when bringing together Indigenous knowledge and Western science? And I think you summed that up quite nicely. It's the appreciation for different value and knowledge systems. If we investigate, how can we navigate those challenges in a way that builds trust and creates that shared value?
Last week when I was up at the Anzac ceremony for our people, notwithstanding it was all in Māori, and 90% were English that were there. But it was during that time, after the ceremony, I went and caught up with an elder to discuss our kumara traditions and how that's been passed down through his different whakapapa through his father's side, and the way in which he encapsulates that knowledge is through what we call Aotearoa. It's a lullaby, and it's 11 verses long, and each verse is quite intensely built, but it's recited and sung in a way as had been sung to him, as his name had been sung to her. So the process of rehearsal is the way in which the oral traditions knowledge is passed forward. And it doesn't mean that tradition is, as you were saying, it's not static. And one of my elders gave me a kind of a whimsical answer to a question where I talked about tradition, and they'd asked, well, what's your definition of tradition? I kind of went off on that academic explanation of it. And he turned around and really simple. Tradition is something waiting to be broken. I think about that. I think, yeah, because if you're stuck in tradition, then you get left behind. And humanity is always a problem. And even us being New Zealanders, we're all participating in the indigenous endemic products of the earth in which we live. So in a way, we are becoming more, so there's only one place in the world Pākehā can be indigenous, that's in New Zealand. Otherwise, if you're in Britain, you're Irish or whatever it is. But the whole Pākehā culture that's developing could only develop because of the other side of the waka, Māori. Of course, Māori meaning ordinary, everyday. And then we had these new people coming in, and it's going back to the tauhara. Tau, which we used to mean arrival, and ho, new. And the Wagside came in probably about 300 or 400 years ago, blown over from Tasmania, and suddenly appeared on the landscape, on the horizons here, and so got different tauhara. But it doesn't mean that it was a traditional bird, but it has become part of our traditions and part of our memory, part of our stories, and even part of our songs. So these are innovatively engaged and included in the building of our mātauranga, of our knowledge base. But the way in which we transferred it wasn't just through song or through prayer or through oratory, it was the context in which it was transferred. Who's the audience? At what level are they ready to receive what knowledge you have? Are you a visitor? Are you an outsider? Are you a grandchild that needs to be re-engaged? How much do we give you in the first sitting compared to in 10 years' time? How much will we revert to you? And then we had mnemonic aids, we had carving, we had weaving. So all of this knowledge that we maintain is still being built on. So our weavings today aren't necessarily made out of parakeke. They can be made out of fine linen from Ireland, etc. So innovation is a continuing practice building of a past that we dare not call traditional, otherwise it's obviously broken.
Thank you for that. One very short and quick question, which will undoubtedly spark conversation in the next 30 minutes or so. For people working in research industry or policy who want to make a contribution in space, what practical action should they take in the next 12 months to move from intention to impact? And take that from a very personal perspective.
I'm going to start off with this. So the practical thing that one person in this room can do is come up and grab this book, read it, and pass it on to the next person. Because there's so much knowledge in here, and that is the way we start to learn. So whoever wants to come up there and read this, this is Paula's work, and it was actually a collaboration with Robin and Warren King in the National Science Challenge that resulted in the publication of this. So that's the one thing they can do. There's actually one thing I'd like a university to think about. So when I was, and I don't know, you might already have this now, but when I started out in my ag science a very long time ago, we didn't have any of this sort of land history that I think would be really valuable for our students nowadays. So some kind, I don't know if there's a kind of course that you can do nowadays. I haven't looked it up, but that understanding that history, that's one thing the university could do, is making sure that we all get up to some baseline, because I know that in my education I'm starting at like negative 50 somewhere, so yeah.
Just a closing comment. Sort of thank you, Chad, for helping bring the best and worst out of us. And that everyone here that's taken time to come here, appreciate it. I mean, we're sharing thoughts, we're reflecting on the past that's brought us to this point today, but so much work to do, so much further to go, and only so many years left within our petrol tanks. So I just want to acknowledge too that you've been here to be part of the conversation. And I know that I hit that on a bit. And the new tata. To mata prana whakatūtu ni mai mātou tēnei rā whakamārama hura hiki ngā whakamata roi ke maha rai hei tāua mō di apu. Amen. Kia ora tata. Travis Sade. Thank you.
Join me in thanking thank you. We very much appreciate that full and frank guide. And while I can open it up to the audience to ask you questions, I'm sure that you can all come to them as we have drinks and meals. So please join us in the foyer at Memorial Hall. Thank you again.